Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club Spiritual Edition. And today we're continuing our reading of Flow by Mihaly, Mr. C. I call him Mr. C because I don't know how to pronounce his last name. And this book was inspired by an animated film with the same name, Flow. I don't think they're associated in any way, shape, or form, but I thought it was interesting. Anyways, you could check out the animated film down in the description box below. And I believe they won an Academy Award for animated series or animated film or something like that. So anyways, congratulations. And today we're going to be reading chapter 3, and this is part 2. And if you look, there are some places where I have a yellow highlight. That means there's a footnote in the back of the book. And we will be reading that as well as we read along. Okay. All right. Let's do it. The merging of action and awareness. When all a person's relevant skills are needed to cope with the challenges of a situation, that person's attention is completely absorbed by the activity. There is no excess psychic energy left over to process any information but what the activity offers. All the attention is concentrated on the relevant stimuli. As a result, one of the most universal and distinctive features of optimal experience takes place. People become so involved in what they're doing that the activity becomes spontaneous, almost automatic. They stop being aware of themselves as separate from the actions they are performing. A dancer describes how it feels when the performance is going well. Your concentration is very complete. Your mind isn't wandering. You're not thinking of something else. You're totally involved in what you're doing. Your energy is flowing very smoothly. You feel relaxed, comfortable, and energetic. And there's a footnote about that. Let me see here. Okay. So the footnote includes the other paragraph, so I'm going to read that too. A rock climber explains how it feels when he is scaling a mountain. You're so involved in what you're doing that you aren't thinking of yourself as separate from the immediate activity. You don't see yourself as separate from what you are doing. A mother who enjoys the time spent with her small daughter. Her reading is the one thing that she's really into, and we read together. She reads to me, and I read to her, and that's a time when I sort of lose touch with the rest of the world. I'm totally absorbed in what I'm doing. Okay. Let's read the oh, there's another one. Okay. All right, I think I got it. You got one more paragraph to go, and then we'll read all the footnotes together. A chess player tells of playing in a tournament. The concentration is like breathing. You never think of it. The roof could fall in, and if it missed you, you would be unaware of it. That's funny. Okay, I think I got it. Now, the 2 or 3 paragraphs that I read have the same footnote. So it starts with your concentration and then the reading and things like that. So your concentration, you're so involved. Those are quotes from Mr. C, 1975, page 39. And then her reading, the one with the little child reading, is from Allison and Duncan, 1988, page 129. The relationship between focused attention and enjoyment was clearly perceived 4 centuries ago by Montaigne. I know it's French. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. 1580, 1958, page 853. I enjoy life twice as much as others, for the measure of enjoyment depends on the greater or lesser attention that we lend it. Mm, okay. All right. Mm. I think I'm gonna move the camera in just a little bit. It seems a little far away to me. Mm, I hope that's better. Anyways, it is for this reason that we called the optimal experience flow. The short and simple word describes well the sense of seemingly effortless movement. The following words from a poet and rock climber apply to all the thousands of interviews collected by us and by others over the years. The mystique of rock climbing is climbing. You get to the top of a rock, glad it's over, but really wish it would go on forever. The justification of climbing is climbing, like the justification of poetry is writing. You don't conquer anything except things in yourself. The act of writing justifies poetry. Climbing is the same, recognizing that you are a flow. The purpose of the flow is to keep on flowing, not looking for a peak or utopia, but staying in the flow. It is not a moving up, but a continuous flowing. You move up to keep the flow going. There is no possible reason for climbing except the climbing itself. It is a self communication. Okay. And the quote about the mystique of rock climbing is from Mr. C, 1975, page 47 and 48. So it looks like our next footnote have a few quotes to it. Okay, I got it, I think. Although the flow experience appears to be effortless, it is far from being so. It often requires strenuous physical exertion or highly disciplined mental activity. It does not happen without the application of skilled performance. Any lapse in concentration will erase it. And yet, while it lasts, consciousness works smoothly. Action follows action seamlessly. In normal life, we keep interrupting what we do with doubts and questions. Why am I doing this? Should I perhaps be doing something else? Repeatedly, we question the necessity of our actions and evaluate critically the reasons for carrying them out. But in flow, there is no need to reflect because the action carries us forward as if by magic. Clear goals and feedback. The reason it is possible to achieve such complete involvement in a flow experience is that goals are usually clear and feedback immediate. A tennis player always knows what she has to do, return the ball into the opponent's court. And each time she hits the ball, she knows whether she has done well or not. The chess player's goals are equally obvious: to mate the opponent's king before his own is mated. With each move, he can calculate whether he has come closer to this objective. The climber inching up a vertical wall of rock has a very simple goal in mind: to complete the climb without falling. Every second, hour after hour, he receives information that he is meeting the same basic goal. Of course, if one chooses a trivial goal, success in it does not provide enjoyment. If I set as my goal to remain alive while sitting on the living room sofa, I also could spend days knowing that I was achieving it, just as the rock climber does. But this realization would not make me particularly happy, whereas the climber's knowledge brings exhilaration to his dangerous ascent. Certain activities require a very long time to accomplish, yet the components of goals and feedback are still extremely important to them. One example was given by a 62-year-old woman living in the Indian Alps who said her most enjoyable experiences were taking care of the cows and tending the orchard. I find special satisfaction in caring for the plants. I like to see them grow every day or day by day. It is very beautiful. Although it involves a period of patient waiting, seeing the plants one has cared for grow provides a powerful feedback even in the urban apartments of American cities. Another example is solo ocean cruising. in which a person alone might sail for weeks in a small boat without seeing land. Jim Macbeth, who did a study of flow in ocean cruising, comments on the excitement a sailor feels when, after days of anxiously scanning the empty reaches of water, he discerns the outline of the island he had been aiming for as it starts to rise over the horizon. One of the legendary cruisers describes this sensation as follows. I experienced a sense of satisfaction coupled with astonishment that my observations of the very distant sun from an unsteady platform and the use of some simple tables enabled a small island to be found with certainty after an ocean crossing. And another, each time I feel the same mixture of astonishment, love, and pride as this new land is born, which seems to have been created for me and by me. Wow, it sounds very poetic. Oh, sorry about the back and forth. I hope that's not too confusing. Okay, so the quote, I find special satisfaction, is from Del, Fave, and Massimini, 1988, page 197. And then the quote, it says, I experience a sense of satisfaction, is from Hiscock, 1968, page 45. And then the quote of says each time is from Montessier, 1971, page 159. The last two are cited in Macbeth. Interesting. 1988, page 228. The goals of an activity are not always as clear as those tennis, and the feedback is often more ambiguous than the simple I am not following information processed by the climber. A composer of music, for instance, may know that he wishes to write a song or a flute concerto, but other than that, his goals are usually quite vague. And how does he know whether the notes he is writing down are right or wrong? The same situation holds true for the artist painting a picture and for all activities that are creative or open-ended in nature. But these are all exceptions that prove the rule. Unless a person learns to set goals and to recognize and gauge the feedback in such activities, she will not enjoy them. And the phrase about painting, or the paragraph about painting, the distinction between more or less original artists is that the former art painting with a general the former start painting with a general and often vague idea of what they want to accomplish, while the latter tend to start with a clearly visualized picture in mind. Interesting. I think both works. Both works. You start with a general idea, or you could start with a visual, clear visual. I think both tactics work. Thus, original artists might discover as they go along what it is that they will do, using feedback from the developing work to suggest new approaches. The less original artists end up painting the picture in their heads, which has no chance to grow and develop. But to be successful in his open-ended process of creation, the original artist must have well internalized criteria for what is good art so that he can choose or discard the right elements in the developing painting. And it's from Gerzels and Mr. C, 1978. Sorry, 1976. Okay. In some creative activities where goals are not clearly set in advance, a person must develop a strong personal sense of what she intends to do. The artist might not have a visual image of what the finished painting should look like, but when the picture has progressed to a certain point, She should know whether this is what she oops, wanted to achieve or not. And a painter who enjoys painting must have internalized criteria for good or bad, so that after each brushstroke, she can say, yes, this works. No, this doesn't. Without such internal guidelines, it is impossible to experience flow. Sometimes the goals and the rules governing an activity are invented or negotiated on the spot. For example, teenagers enjoy impromptu interactions in which they try to gross each other out, or tell tall stories, or make fun of their teachers. The goal of such sessions emerges by trial and error, and is rarely made explicit. Often it remains below the participants' level of awareness. Yet it is clear that these activities develop their own rules, and that those who take part have a clear idea of what constitutes a successful move and of who is doing well. In many ways, this is the pattern of good jazz band or any improvisational group. Scholars or debaters obtain similar satisfaction when the moves in their arguments mesh smoothly and produce the desired result. What constitutes feedbacks varies considerably in different activities. Some people are indifferent to things that others cannot get enough of. For instance, surgeons who love doing operations claim that they wouldn't switch to internal medicine even if they were paid 10 times as much as they are for doing surgery, because an internist never know oh, sorry about that, because an internist never knows exactly how well he is doing. In an operation, on the other hand, the status of the patient is almost always clear. As long as there is no blood in the incision, for example, a specific procedure has been successful. When the diseased organ is cut, the surgeon's task is accomplished. After that, there is the suture that gives a gratifying sense of closure to the activity. And the surgeon's disdain for psychiatry is even greater than that for internal medicine. To hear surgeons talk, the psychiatrist must spend 10 years with a patient without knowing whether the cure is helping him. Okay, surgery. And the quote about surgery is surgery as a flow experience is described in Mr. C, 1975, 1985b. Yet the psychiatrist who enjoys his trade is also receiving constant feedback. The way the patient holds himself, the expression on his face, the hesitation in his voice, the content of the material he brings up in the therapeutic hour. All these bits of information are important clues that psychiatrists use to monitor the progress of the therapy. The difference between a surgeon and a psychiatrist is that the former considers blood and excision the only feedback worth attending to, whereas the latter considers the signals reflecting a patient's state of mind to be significant information. The surgeon judges the psychiatrist to be soft because he is interested in such ephemeral goals. The psychiatrist thinks the surgeon crude for his concentration on mechanics. The kind of feedback we work toward is in and of itself often unimportant. What difference does it make if I hit the tennis ball between the white lines, if I immobilize the enemy king on the chessboard, or if I notice a glimmer of understanding in my patient's eyes at the end of the therapeutic hour? What makes this information valuable is the symbolic message it contains, that I have succeeded in my goal. Such knowledge creates order in consciousness and strengthens the structure of the self. Almost any kind of feedback can be enjoyable, provided it is logically related to a goal in which, excuse me, got a lot of burpees today, provided it is logically related to a goal in which one has invested psychic energy. If I were to set myself up to balance a walking stick on my nose, on my house, If I were to set myself up to balance a walking stick on my nose, then the sight of the stick wobbling upright above my face would provide a brief, enjoyable interlude. But each of us is temperamentally sensitive to a certain range of information that we learn to value more than most other people do. And it is likely that we will consider feedback involving that information to be more relevant than others might. And there's a footnote about that. Exceptional sensitivities. The common sense impression that different children have a facility for developing different talents, some having an affinity for physical movements, others for music or languages or for getting along with other people, has recently been formalized in the theory of multiple intelligences by Howard Gardner, 1983. Gardner and his collaborators at Harvard are now at work developing a comprehensive testing battery for each of the 7 major dimensions of intelligence he has identified. The importance of feedback for the blind is reported in Massimini, Mr. C, and Del Fave, 1988, page 79 to 80. I think that's the next paragraph, but that's okay. We read the footnote first. So you know where the quote is from, right? Or the idea, concept is from. All right. A good illustration of the importance of feedback. I think I missed a paragraph. I think I did, yeah. Okay. Okay, I read the footnote first before I read the paragraph. That's okay. It's a reference to where it came from anyways. So, for instance, some people are born with exceptional sensitivity to sound. They can discriminate among different tones and pitches and recognize and remember combinations of sounds better than the general public. It is likely that such individuals will be attracted to playing with sounds. They will learn to control and shape auditory information. For them, the most important feedback will consist in being able to combine sounds to produce or reproduce rhythms and melodies. Composers, singers, performers, conductors, and music critics will develop from among them. In contrast, some are genetically predisposed to be unusually sensitive to other people, and they will learn to pay attention to the signals they send out. The feedback they will be looking for is the expression of human emotion. Some people have fragile selves that need constant reassurance, and for them, the only information that counts is winning in a competitive situation. Others have invested so much in being liked that the only feedback they take into account is approval and admiration. A good illustration of the importance of feedback is contained in the responses of a group of blind religious women interviewed by Professor Fausto Massimini's team of psychologists in Milan, Italy. Like the other respondents in our studies, they were asked to describe the most enjoyable experiences in their lives. For these women, most of whom have been sightless since birth, the most frequently mentioned flow experiences were the result of reading books in Braille, praying, doing handicrafts like knitting and binding books, and helping each other in case of sickness and other need. Of the over 600 people interviewed by the Italian team, these blind women stressed more than anyone else the importance of receiving clear feedback as a condition for enjoyment for whatever they're doing. Unable to see what was going on around them, they needed to know even more than sighted people whether what they are trying to accomplish was actually coming to pass. Concentration on the task at hand. Oh, we have a footnote on feedback. Let's see here. Oh, we read that already. Okay. Concentration on the task at hand. One of the most frequently mentioned dimensions of the flow experience is that while it lasts, one is able to forget all the unpleasant aspects of life. This feature of flow is an important byproduct of the fact that enjoyable activities require a complete focusing of attention on the task at hand, thus leaving no room in the mind for irrelevant information. In normal everyday existence, we are the prey of thoughts and worries, intruding unwanted in consciousness. Because most jobs and home life in general lack the pressing demands of flow experiences, concentration is rarely so intense that preoccupations and anxieties can be automatically ruled out. Consequently, the ordinary state of mind involves unexpected and frequent episodes of entropy, interfering with the smooth run of psychic energy. This author uses big words, psychological words that he could probably use more everyday words to describe what he's wanting to say. I don't know, that's just my opinion, you know. Yeah, like words like entropy and psychic energy. I mean, they all sound fancy and nice, but it's not something that we use every day, right? It's not in our everyday language. Anyways, that just kind of struck me. I got a little squirrel there. Sorry about that. This is one reason why flow improves the quality of experience. The clearly structured demands of the activity impose order and exclude the interference of disorder in consciousness. A professor of physics who was an avid rock climber described his state of mind while climbing as follows. It is as if my memory input has been cut off. All I can remember is the last 30 seconds, and all I can think ahead is the next 5 minutes. In fact, any activity that requires concentration has a similarly narrow window of time. And that quote, it is as if, that quote is from Mr. C, 1975, page 40. Now, the next a footnote has quite a bit of quotes. So let me take a peek here. Okay. So the next quote encompasses quite a few paragraphs, so I'm going to read them all first. But it is not only the temporal focus that counts. What is even more significant is that only a very select range of information can be allowed into awareness. Therefore, all the troubling thoughts that ordinarily keep passing through the mind are temporarily kept in abeyance. As a young basketball player explains, the court, that's all that matters. Sometimes out on the court, I think of a problem, like fighting with my steady girl. And I think that's nothing compared to the game. You could think about a problem all day, but as soon as you get into the game, the hell with it. And another, kids my age, they think a lot. But when you're playing basketball, that's all there is on your mind, just basketball. Everything else to follow. Everything seems to follow right along. A mountaineer expands on the same theme. When you're climbing, you're not aware of other problematic life situations. It becomes a world unto its own, significant only to itself. It's a concentration thing. Once you're into the situation, it's incredibly real, and you're very much in charge of it. It becomes your total world. A similar sensation is reported by a dancer. I get a feeling that I don't get anywhere else. I have more confidence in myself than any other time. Maybe an effort to forget my problems. Dance is like therapy. If I am troubled about something, I leave it out of the door as I go in the dance studio. On a larger time scale, ocean cruising provides an equivalent merciful oblivion. But no matter how many little discomforts there may be at sea, one's real cares and worries seem to drop out of sight as the land slips behind the horizon. Once we were at sea, there was no point in worrying. There was nothing we could do about our problems till we reached the next port. Life was for a while stripped of its artificialities. Other problems seemed quite unimportant compared with the state of the wind and the sea and the length of the day's run. Okay, let's read the footnotes for all those quotes there. The Court and Kids My Age quote are from Mr. C, 1975, page 40 to 41. The quote about when you're climbing is from IBIT, page 81, and the quote from I Get a Feeling was from IBIT, page 41. And the quote about no matter how many ... is from Krelock, 1951, page 99 to 100. Quoted in Macbeth, 1988, page 221 to 222. The quotation from Edwin Moses is in Johnson, 1988, page 6. And I think Edwin Johnson quote is going to come up next. Edwin Moses, the great hurdler, has this to say in describing the concentration necessary for a race. Your mind has to be absolutely clear. The fact that you have to cope with your opponent, jet lag, different food, sleeping in hotels, and personal problems has to be erased from consciousness as if they didn't exist. Although Moses was talking about what it takes to win world-class sports events, he could have been describing the kind of concentration we achieve when we enjoy any activity. The concentration of the flow experience, together with clear goals and immediate feedback, provides order to consciousness, inducing the enjoyable condition of psychic negentropy. And I am going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's wow, that came on pretty strong. It's my little allergies acting up here. The paradox of control. And I just want to say, as a side note, control is an illusion. Yep, control is an illusion. The only thing you can control is your emotions, is your state of mind, is your inner self, right? Everything else is an illusion. The paradox of control. Enjoyment often occurs in games, sports, and other leisure activities that are distinct from ordinary life, where any number of bad things can happen. If a person loses a chess game or botches his hobby, he need not worry. In real life, however, a person who mishandles a business deal may get fired, lose the mortgage on the house, and end up on public assistance. Thus, the flow experience is typically described as involving a sense of control, or more precisely, as lacking the sense of worry about losing control. That is typical in many situations of normal life. Here is how a dancer expresses his dimension of the flow experience. A strong relaxation and calmness comes over me. I have no worries of failure. What a powerful and warm feeling it is. I want to expand, to hug the world. I feel enormous power to affect something of grace and beauty. And a chess player, I have a general feeling of well-being and that I am in complete control of my world. Okay, so the quote about a strong relaxation and a strong relaxation ... and I have a feeling, general feeling ... Those quotes are from Mr. C, 1975, page 44 and 45. What these respondents are actually describing is the possibility rather than the actuality of control. The ballet dancer may fall, break her leg, and never make the perfect turn, and the chess player may be defeated and never become a champion. But at least in principle, in the world of flow, perfection is attainable. This sense of control is also reported in enjoyable activities that involve serious risks, activities that to an outsider would seem to be much more potentially dangerous than the affairs of normal life. People who practice hang gliding, spelunking, what the heck is that? Spelunking. I don't know what that is. I gotta look it up. Rock climbing, race car driving, deep sea diving, and many similar sports for fun are purposefully placing themselves in situations that lack the safety nets of civilized life. Yet, all these individuals report flow experiences in which a heightened sense of control plays an important part. It is usual to explain the motivation of those who enjoy dangerous activities as some sort of pathological need, like Tom Cruise and his stunts, his crazy stunts. They're trying to exorcise a deep-seated fear. They are compensating, they are compulsively reenacting an oedipal fixation. They are sensation seekers. While such motives may be occasionally involved, what is most striking when one actually speaks to specialists in risk is how their enjoyment derives not from the danger itself, but from their ability to minimize it. So, rather than a pathological thrill that comes from courting disaster, the positive emotion they enjoy is the perfectly healthy feeling of being able to control potentially dangerous forces. The important thing to realize here is that the activities that produce flow experiences, even the seemingly most risky ones, are so constructed as to allow the practitioner to develop sufficient skills to reduce the margin of error to as close to zero as possible. Rock climbers, for instance, recognize two sets of dangers, objective and subjective ones. The first kind are the unpredictable physical events that might confront a person on a mountain: the sudden storm, an avalanche, a falling rock, a drastic drop in temperature. One can prepare oneself against these threats, but they can never be completely foreseen. Subjective dangers are those that arise from the climber's lack of skill, including the inability to estimate correctly the difficulty of a climb in relation to one's ability. The whole point of climbing is to avoid objective dangers as much as possible and to eliminate subjective dangers entirely by rigorous discipline and sound preparation. As a result, climbers generally believe that climbing the Matterhorn is safer than crossing a street in Manhattan, where the objective dangers, taxi drivers, bicycle messengers, buses, muggers, are far less predictable than those on the mountain, and where personal skills have less chance to ensure the pedestrian's safety. It's got a good point there. As this example illustrates, what people enjoy is not the sense of being in control, but the sense of exercising control in difficult situations. It is not possible to experience a feeling of control unless one is willing to give up the safety of protective routines. Only when a doubtful outcome is at stake and one is able to influence that outcome can a person really know whether she is in control. One type of activity seems to constitute an exception. Games of chance are enjoyable, yet by definition, they are based on random outcomes, presumably not affected by personal skills. The spin of a roulette wheel or the turn of a card in blackjack cannot be controlled by the player. In this case, at least, the sense of control must be irrelevant to the experience of enjoyment. The objective conditions, however, happen to be deceptive, for it is actually the case that gamblers who enjoy games of hazard are subjectively convinced that their skills do play a major role in the outcome. In fact, they tend to stress the issue of control even more than practitioners of activities where skills obviously allow greater control. Poker players are convinced it is their ability and not chance that makes them win. If they lose, they are much more inclined to credit bad luck. And even in defeat, they're willing to look for a personal lapse to explain the outcome. Roulette players develop elaborate systems to predict the turn of the wheel. In general, players of games of chance often believe that they have the gift of seeing into the future, at least within the restricted set of goals and rules that defines their game. And this most ancient feeling of control, whose precursors include the rituals of divination, so prevalent in every culture, is one of the greatest attractions the experience of gambling offers. And here's a footnote on gambling. One of the earliest psychological studies of gambling is the one by Csikszentmihalyi, 1977. Games of chance have developed from the divinatory aspects of religious ceremonials has been argued by Cullen, 1906, page 32, 37, 43, David, 1962, and Huizinga, 1939, 1970. This sense of being in a world where entropy is suspended explains in part why flow-producing activities can become so addictive. Novelists have often written on the theme of chess as a metaphor for escape from reality. Vladimir Nabokov's short story, The Lucian Defense, describes a young chess genius so involved in the game that the rest of his life, his marriage, his friendships, his livelihood, is going by the boards. Lucian tries to cope with these problems, but he's unable to see them except in terms of chess situations. His wife is the white queen, standing on the fifth square of the third file, threatened by the black bishop, who is Lucian's agent, and so forth. In trying to solve his personal conflicts, Lucian turns to sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, tongue-twisted here. His personal conflicts. Okay, Lucian, in order to deal with his personal conflicts, he turns to chess strategy and endeavors to invent the Lucian defense, a set of motives that will make him invulnerable to outside attacks. As his relationships in real life disintegrate, Lucian has a series of hallucinations in which the important people around him become pieces on a huge chessboard trying to immobilize him. Finally, he has a vision of the perfect defense against his problems and jumps out of the hotel window. Such stories about chess are not so far-fetched. Many champions, including the first and last great American chess players or chess masters, Paul Morphy and Bobby Fischer, became so comfortable with the beautifully clear-cut and logically ordered world of chess that they turned their backs on the messy confusion of the real world. Okay. Here's a note about Morphy and Fischer. The similarity between the careers of these two chess champions, who lived a century apart, is indeed striking. Paul Charles Morphy, 1837 to 1884, became a chess master in his early teens. When he was 22 years old, he traveled to Europe, where he beat everyone who dared to play against him. After he returned to New York, potential competitors thought he was too good and were afraid to play him even at favorable odds. Deprived of his only source of flow, Morphy became a recluse, displaying eccentric and paranoid behavior. For parallels with Bobby Fischer's career, C. Watson, 1988, there are two lines of explanation for such coincidences. One is that people with fragile psychic organization are disproportionately attracted to chess. The other is that chess, at highly competitive levels, requires a complete commitment of psychic energy and can become addictive. When a player becomes a champion and exhausts all the challenges of the activity into which so much of his attention has been invested, he runs a serious risk of becoming disoriented because the goal that has been given order to his consciousness is no longer meaningful. The exhilaration gamblers feel in figuring out random chance is even more notorious. Early ethnographers have described North American Plains Indians so hypnotically involved in gambling with buffalo rib bones that losers would often leave the teepee without clothes in the dead of winter, having wagered away their weapons, horses, and wives as well. Almost any enjoyable activity can become addictive, in the sense that instead of being a conscious choice, it becomes a necessity that interferes with other activities. Surgeons, for instance, describe operations as being addictive, like taking heroin. When a person becomes, okay, so let's read the footnote about the gambling, the American Indians. Okay, gambling among American Indians is described by Cullen, 1906, Cushion, 1896, and Cole, 1860. Carver, 1796, page 238, describes Iroquois playing until they have lost everything they owned, including their moccasins, and then walking back to their home camp in snow 3 feet deep. An observer of the Tarahumara in Mexico reported that he may go on playing stick dice for a fortnight to a month until he has lost everything he has in the world except his wife and children. He draws the line on that. Lupholtz, 1902, 1987, page 278. And then quote about surgeons. Surgeons who claim that performing operations can be addictive are quoted in Mr. C, 1975, page 138 and 139 to 139. When a person becomes so dependent on the ability to control an enjoyable activity that he cannot pay attention to anything else, then he loses the ultimate control, the freedom to determine the freedom to determine the content of consciousness. Thus, enjoyable activities that produce flow have a potentially negative aspect. While they are capable of improving the quality of existence by creating order in the mind, they can become addictive, at which point the self becomes captive of a certain kind of order and is then unwilling to cope with the ambiguities of life. Wow. Okay, we will stop here for now. I hope you enjoyed that. And we will continue next time with chapter 3. Okay, in the meantime, I hope you guys all have a great day and a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.